So in this lab, we have a Linux machine with the Metasploit framework pre-installed inside it. Just in case if you want to look at the steps for installation, you can actually refer to this GitHub page of Metasploit framework. I'll drop in the link to this page in the video description. And the installation is pretty straightforward with the help of a script for both the Linux and Mac OS. Let me quickly show you how this thing works. So you use this command to download the script, and once the script has been downloaded, you can actually just execute this script and it will take care of the installation of all the dependencies and the various components. So for me, it's already installed, need not to do anything over here. Okay. So before we start with the Msf console, let's see which version we are running. We'll give this command as msf console -- version. So we are running the version 6.1.28. okay, now a quick handy command is --help, which will give you the various options or just get you know about what this tool can do. Anyways, let's fire up the console. Before we fire up the console, actually there's one more feature of Metasploit, which is the Msfdb, and this helps you persist your settings and configurations that you run the very next time you log into the console. So how it works is you need to set up the DB very first time when you are using the Msf console utility. To do this, the command is msfdb init, but you need to make sure you run this command as a non-sudo user or non-root user. So it's probably gonna give me some warning over here. Yeah, so I'll log in to the non-sudo user over here and I'll run the command msfdb init. Since I've already set up the DB, so it's gonna ask me to reinitialize this thing. Okay, no, yeah, it's gonna delete the existing and create a new database. Perfect. Now that the database has been set up, we can actually start the Msf console. Okay, and first time when we connect to the console, we can use the command db_connect followed by your non-sudo user create localhost. Perfect. Now that the DB has been connected, we can actually look at the status. Is that it has been connected to the PostgreSQL database. Perfect. This is the name of the connection. Now, something which is very interesting about this tool is you can actually create something called as workspaces, and workspaces let you persist what you do over that particular session. Now, let's say you're working on multiple projects, you can actually create workspaces for all those projects. So I've already created the one for Hacker TV Labs, and we're gonna switch to this workspace. Perfect. Okay, and now let's look at a few more examples over here. So let's say you're running any penetration testing, or you're not trying to play around with any of the modules like scanner or exploit. Before you do that, you need to make a scan into the network so that you can identify what all different devices are there. And we usually use many scanners, like the one I use is Nmap. So one pretty good thing is that Metasploit framework comes in handy with a tool called as db-Nmap, and the advantage is whatever Nmap scan that you run, you can actually run it inside the console and the output would be saved inside the database. So you need not to run those scans all and all again when you start working on any of your projects. Let me show you how it is done. You use the command db_Nmap followed by, let's say I want to do a TCP connect scan, but where do I want to run the scan? Let me check my network subnet 10.1.1. so let's say I want to run it on TCP connect scan port range 1 to 1024 on 10.1.1.1 024. Perfect. Now that it's gonna run the scan, also it's gonna save the output inside the DB, like let's say what all hosts have been found or what are open ports found. So this information is very handy, so that whenever you're trying to break into one particular system, you have all this information handy. Now that the scan has run, you can actually use command call as hosts to identify what all hosts have been identified from the scan, and already we can see a lot of ports that are already open. So in today's example, first we'll try to exploit a Linux machine which is running a vulnerable FTP server. So over here I have a Linux machine 10.1.37. This is the machine which is running a vulnerable FTP server. One good thing about Msf console is that you can actually run your the CLI or the bash or any shell that you use on your operating system. You can actually use those commands as well inside the console. Let's say I just want to do ls or change directory, fconfig, anything, so you can run those commands as well. Now let's say I want to FTP to that machine with a vulnerable FTP. Yeah, now that we can see that this machine has an FTP server running, and what makes me very much confident that we can use an exploit for this machine is that it's running a version 2.3.4, which is a vulnerable version. And let's see how we can actually exploit it using Metasploit. I'm gonna log into this thing right now. Yeah. So before we start with the exploit, usually either you can look at the exploits that are available for Metasploit on a community edition online, or you can actually search for the list of available modules inside the console itself. So how to do that is using the search command. Let me start the console again. Okay, now what we're going to use is the search command to search for any exploit for VST. So let's say this is the keyword that I wanted to search inside all the modules. So Msfdb. So we see that there is an exploit for this particular service, and it's a backdoor, so we can actually access the machine from our Linux machine with the Metasploit. So let's say we want to use this exploit. So how to use the exploit is using again the use keyword followed by the path of the exploit, which over here is exploit Unix TP is FTPD. So every exploit has different configurations or options available with it. The important one is the payload, and as we learned, the payload is something which gets executed on the host operating system once the exploit has completed. So over here it has defaulted to this exploit, and we'll probably gonna get a Linux shell after the exploit is complete. Before we run the exploit, it's important to understand what all options are available, and we need to configure the mandatory options. And right now the service is running on the port 21, so it's fine. And the next thing is the remote host or the targets in our case. So we'll configure this option by using the set option, set our hosts followed by the IP address of the machine 37. Yeah, now that we have configured the exploit, the next command is exploit to start the exploitation of the host using the vulnerability. So now the exploit has successfully run, and we have got a shell to the remote machine, as you can see over here. Now to verify which user we are running, we can use the command as ID. We can see that we are currently logged in as a root user. Let me change the directory. Let's say anyways, so since we have the access, we can actually do pretty much anything on the CLI. And to get out, I'll use the exit command now. So we saw in this example that we can use one of the exploits on a vulnerable service to gain access to the machine as a root user and pretty much to do anything. Now let's go on to the example wherein we'll try to exploit a Windows machine using one of the exploits available. All right, so in this lab, we have a Kali Linux machine with the Metasploit framework, and we'll try to exploit the Windows machine over here using the Metasploit framework. So let's fire up the console first. Okay, and let's connect the DB. Now that the DB has been connected, let's identify the network in which we are. We are right now in this one network. Let's try to run a db-Nmap scan on range of 1004, 102.16.144./20. Now let's look at the various machines inside this network, and we can see that we have a Windows machine, and this is the one vulnerable service that we'll try to exploit in this today's example. Now let's look at the hosts. So host for us should be .130. This is the Windows machine that we'll try to exploit. In this today's example, we're going to look at one of the very famous exploit called as Eternal Blue. The reason, the fact that it is so popular is if you ever heard about the term WannaCry ransomware. So this is the one most popular used exploit to drop into most of the systems in the world, the ransomwares that we see today. Let's quickly search for Eternal Blue. All right, so we have a couple of exploits and some scanners as well. Let's actually use the scanner first to identify if the machine is even vulnerable to this exploit. A good way before we exploit any machine to verify whether that exploit will run or not. We'll use this scanner, and let's look at the options. So it's configured on port 445. All right, we'll need to set the R hosts, which is 172.16.1. Look at the host 144.130. Yeah, let's run the not the exploit but the scanner, and the output says that the host is likely to be vulnerable to this exploit, so it's a good indication to use the exploit. Let's search for the exploit again. So for these list of exploits, you can actually look at the community page of Metasploit framework for all the public exploits available for different services and operating system. But the good way is to actually search for the service inside and see what all modules are available. Now let's try and use the exploit. Windows SMB. We're gonna use this MS17 Eternal Blue. So in this example, we'll see that we will have a different payload, which is called as Metapreter. It's again an interactive shell. Along with normal shell, it will provide you a few more functionalities. We'll see what all those functionalities are. Before that, let's see what all options are available to configure. Okay, so these are the configurations for the payload, and the payload is basically a reverse TCP connection to the Kali Linux machine. It's running on port 4443. So once a successful exploit has been run, this payload will drop and it will make the Windows machine connect back to the Linux machine. Now the R host needs to be configured. The service is already on port 445. So let's say R host 630. Let me verify the IP. 144.130. Fine. Now the magic happens with the command called as exploit, and once exploit has successfully finished, we should have a Metapreter session with an access to this Windows machine. So, fine. So we can see already we have an access to the Windows machine. So in this case, the shell would be a command prompt. So we'll get the commands which we can use in a Windows shell. So with this directory command, I can actually see what all files are there. And let's say I wanna change the directory. Anyways, so I have the access to the file system of Windows. What next can we do? Let's look at some interesting commands inside Metasploit. We can actually take some screenshots over here. We use the command screenshot. This screenshot would be saved inside the home directory. Yeah. We can see that we have the screenshot of what's happening on this machine right now. Okay. So instead of screenshot, you can actually do something more better, which is called as screen share. So let's try that example. Not this, not this. Yeah. Let's try the command called as screen share. Actually, this is more useful. It will stream the entire Windows machine. So whatever action that happens over there, you can actually see in live what's happening in this machine. So whatever this guy is going to do, let's say blah blah any file, whichever. Anyway, anyways, let's get back enough fun. Now we saw that we can actually take screenshots or even see the remote screen. What next can we do? Again, the CLI access we saw. There are actually a bunch of more commands, but let's try to exit this thing first. You can actually use the help command to look at what all things you can do with the Metasploit payload. Quickly see what all examples we have. So these are the list of options. You can dump the contents of SAM database to look at the different users. Maybe try to escalate your privilege to the system user. You can even play some sounds or any audio files onto the victim machine. Even if the victim has a webcam connected to the Windows machine, you can actually look at the webcam feed. You can capture the mouse activity or what's the user typing on his keyboard. Everything can actually, pretty much you have a lot of things you can try and experiment. So let's look at the last command, which is background. So once you get an access to a machine, you can actually put that shell into the background, and let's say you keep on working on something else, and then after some time you want to look at that particular one machine that you exploited. So use the sessions command. You will have already a session open. So use session command followed by the ID to get back access to that machine again. So with this, we come to an end of the Metasploit 101, and we saw how we can exploit a Linux machine and also a Windows machine using this framework. Every day there are lots of new vulnerabilities coming, and a lot of public exploits are available so that you can experiment around and make your systems more secure. With this, we come to the end of the video. I hope you liked the video. Do hit the like button and drop in your comments. Stay safe, stay secure, keep hacking. Hacker TV signing off.